Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting of the City Council Rules Subcommittee to order. The only order of business before us is whether to extend special meetings for the city manager, the city auditor, and city clerk for the calendar year 2013. With that, I'd open it up to the subcommittee. Does anybody?
Have a roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry. Roll call. Councilor Martin.
Here.
Councilor Mendonça.
Here.
Councilor Kennedy. Here. Everybody's here.
Thank you.
Did I do your job for you? With that, I'll open it up to the subcommittee.
Well, I guess I'd start. I don't have strong feelings about this either way. I've seen some benefit to having these meetings. I think, you know, we still have a ways to go with some of the issues, particularly with the clerk. I think, you know, the whole agenda net and how we're going to comply with the state statutes regarding ethics certifications and things, I think we made good progress on all those, but I think there's still works in progress, so I think there is an ongoing need to continue to meet with the clerk. And I think, you know, the special meetings with the manager, I can see the need for some of those. You know, particularly regard to the capital plan, I think those meetings would be well suited to discussions of that, which we're facing in the next few months. I think there's been at least some thought about taking the capital plan and having that kind of decided upon separate from the budget process. And I think there's some value to that. So, on the other hand, you know, I don't know, certainly not all of these meetings have been the most productive in my view. I think on balance, I think my view is that we've been maybe better with them than without them, because when we don't schedule them for certain topics tend to slide. So, but I'm open to hear what others have to say and listen to other viewpoints.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yeah, I would tend to concur that it may not be necessary to have a special meeting to do the oversight, but the oversight's still necessary. So we'll have to continue. And I think overall it has been a good thing that we did by keeping some of these issues on our own front burners, so to speak, so that we could actively keep track of them and make sure that we are making progress in those departments. As we move forward, we still should have some oversight and possibly, if not special meeting, then maybe the actual subcommittee which I had, which is the clerk and auditor oversight subcommittee, could have subcommittee meetings prior to the meeting, maybe at the last Tuesday of the month, so we continue to do that. But the charter of the subcommittee is to oversee the clerk and the auditor right now, and not the city manager. So that's something that will have to be decided by the council on whether we do that as a special meeting or add it to the role of the oversight subcommittee. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Okay. Before I open it up to the other councilors that are here, I would just like to state that my position is probably a little bit different. I think that the idea of this, when it was proposed last January, was a good idea and one worth trying, but I think that by and large, at least for my part, I've found the special meetings to be not as valuable as I thought they would be, or as I thought it was intended. And that, combined with the creation of the recreation of the Oversight Committee, makes me think that there isn't so much of a need for these special meetings. So I guess I believe that what the Rules Committee did at the beginning of the year was to say that we would try this on a trial basis. So I think if we take no action, there wouldn't be these special meetings. So there'll need to be an affirmative vote in order to do that. But I think between the Oversight Committee and the fact that the City Council can call meetings if they need to with the city manager anytime they want is sufficient. Councilor Mercy.
Thank you very much, Chairman Kennedy.
And I want to thank you for bringing my motion forward to this subcommittee, which was placed on December 11th to establish a date to vote either to retain or remove the last meeting in the month dedicated to the manager, auditor, and city clerk. And if my memory serves me right, about a year ago, there was a dual motion from the mayor as well as Councilor Mendonça to create this, establish this last meeting of the month dedicated to 1 week, the 1 month, the city manager, the clerk, and the auditor. And at that time, there was a pressing need, I agree. And I'm not saying that there isn't an ongoing need. There certainly will be at times, but I don't think it's as great as it was in the beginning. And we always have a clerk/auditor oversight subcommittee. I think perhaps you could amend that to say clerk/auditor/city manager oversight subcommittee, and on any given time when there's a need there, to come forward. Maybe it's the last Tuesday of the month before the city council meeting for an hour before. I know that I'm not on this subcommittee, but I'm always willing to come by and listen or see what's important that the manager or the clerk or the auditor have to say. But I don't think it warrants taking precious time and a sequence of events out of order just for this, because it's very confusing to the public. There were many times when I'd call the city clerk and say, could you put this on for the next meeting? And he'd say, no, the next meeting is after that. So it was frustrating to me because I want things done and motions made when they need to be. But be that as it may, it was on a trial basis for a year. That's why I brought up this motion, to see if there's still a need for it. Personally, I don't think that there's no need for it. I think it just doesn't need to come in place of a city council meeting, which I think is important as well. So I would be willing to see probably Joe Mendonça make a motion to probably not move on with this being in the last Tuesday of the month, but to have it go to the clerk, auditor, and if we could amend it /city manager oversight subcommittee. That's my feeling as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I new to the council, unlike Councilor Mercier and most of you, when this first introduced and the council adopted, I liked the idea, and I still like the idea because I'm benefited from it as a new council. I learned a lot, and instead of putting a dozen of things on the agenda, you focus on the important, let's say the clerk office, let's say the auditor, let's say the manager. You still can put things in the next meeting around if that's important, but solely devote those to those specific topic of discussion that's important to the city. I think it's continued to be important and beneficial to me. I can't speak for everyone else, but I think, I would urge that the committee continue this on maybe another year. Thank you.
Want to speak?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The idea originally was to change the approach to our oversight of both the auditor and clerk's offices, because we do meet every week, except for in the summer, to deal with things that come up with the city manager. This was really to take a more proactive approach, so that even though sometimes a subcommittee might suffice in dealing with the issues that arise, this is to continue to have that proactive approach, so that you're dealing with issues before they become problems, rather than having problems arise, having to need to make a motion that's then referred to a subcommittee and discussed then. So I think it changes the approach to it. Now, whether or not these meetings have all been productive, I think, is up to ourselves. It's up to each counselor to continually be looking at what could be issues in each of the 3 departments. And then, making motions to that effect and coming up with agenda items to that effect. But I think the important point is that the responsibility for that oversight is all of ours. It's not just a subcommittee of 3 people. It's each individual counselor to conduct that oversight. And so I think that's why, although they may not have been as productive as hoped, they still could be. And so I hope that these would be seen as a vehicle to actually conduct that oversight in a more proactive manner. Thank you.
Okay, is anybody else? Do we have a motion?
Let me just, as regards to the subcommittees, I think it's important to note that, the subcommittees usually meet, or by rule, are only supposed to meet on items referred by the full council. So to think, the chair of the subcommittee is going to now be charged with general oversight, I don't think it's fair to the chairperson of that subcommittee, whoever that is, and I don't think it's consistent with our existing rules either, which I think is another point in favor of retaining the system. But
Councilor Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, in my opinion, we can still approach this in a different way and still have oversight and not put the burden on the subcommittee. Instead of this meeting being held in place of a city council meeting, we could make the rules so that the special meeting comes before the city council meeting, and that way we're not taking away from a city council meeting. We could do this on a monthly basis, such as we continue it. My whole point is we're taking time away from a city council meeting, and that I don't approve of. I'm not saying that we don't want to be proactive, or we don't want transparency, or we don't want to do diligence to our responsibility. We do. We could still have a special meeting as we continue to do, but not in place of a city council meeting. That's my opinion.
What if we did this as a compromise? Suppose we just went and had the regular meetings. So we would have the regular schedule of regular city council meetings with a regular agenda. But for eight times at the end of the 8 months, and I think we had it 8 times because of the summertime schedule, right? At the conclusion of the last meeting of the month, we would then take up oversight if there was required, so that, for instance, in January at the end of the month, at the conclusion of the regular city council meeting, there would be a meeting on oversight for the city clerk. And that meeting might last a half hour, it might last an hour and a half, and it might last 10 minutes. But that would at least retain them. We'd keep the city council meetings, and maybe the city manager's meeting needs to have more time dedicated to it than the clerk's or the city auditor. And so it might be good to try that for a year, and that would keep the system in place, but we wouldn't be giving up regular meetings. I mean, I'll just throw that out there, but what do you think about that? Mr. Mayor.
I guess 2 points I'd make is, one, that this is still city business. It's not as if these aren't issues that we shouldn't be looking at the end of each month. The second is that, councilors in the past have brought up the point that each of these offices, both the auditor and clerk, ought to be independent from the manager and ought to have a kind of, I think, that in setting these meetings at the end of each month devoted strictly for the auditor or the clerk, you are able to preserve that kind of independence, that you're giving that office the proper oversight as you would the city managers.
But what's the difference in what I'm proposing? I mean, you would adjourn the regular city council
Well, I
meeting
think
at
the
the final
difference is-
Tuesday, and then take up the special meeting.
Which sounds to me to be giving short shrift to the city clerk or the city auditor. I mean, we've had some fairly lengthy city auditor meetings that went on for a couple of hours. And so, I mean, and over the last year, we've had lengthy regular meetings. So you're looking at potentially going well beyond 10 o'clock, and I'm not sure that everyone's up for that. But I'm open to suggestions.
Yeah, I would imagine that people would be cognizant of the fact that there was going to be that meeting at the end of the month, and that both the city manager's office and the city councilors would keep that agenda light, or do what they could to keep that agenda light. Council Mercia.
In an effort to compromise, which is a great idea, not saying that I'm right and you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong, that compromise is worth merit. I would suggest that we hold a special meeting on the last of every month, and it begins at 5 o'clock. You have until 6:30, and you're not gonna fear that you may go past the 10 o'clock rule because you've done it before. Cheryl is already here. You won't have to go home that day. You can just come right here. The city clerk is here. Everybody's here. The city manager, I don't see the problem with starting it at 5 and have that special meeting before the city council meeting. You get an hour and a half, and if we can't discuss auditor's business within an hour and a half, something's not right here. We get major problems.
Right, but I think you also have to be, you need to pay some attention to people who work out of town. So while there's many city councils that could make a 5 o'clock meeting, then there may be some who can't. And so, you have to be fair to them too, because,
Well, we could discuss this at the city council meeting when they are here, because that is a point as well. Maybe you could make it at 5:30 to 6:30 for an hour. I don't know how you have to go, are we in that much of chaos that we have to go beyond that?
no, I don't think that we're in chaos at all, but I don't think that we're having the meetings necessarily because there's chaos. I think the way that the things have been operating in the city clerk's office for this past year have been fine, and that there haven't been many problems. And so you don't need probably 90 minutes with the city clerk or even anywhere near that. With the city manager, I've felt that some of those meetings were, that the agenda was limited, and I had assumed when we were going to try this out for a year, that those meetings would be sort of freewheeling or open to a wide range of agenda items, and that you could ask the city manager on any question you wanted. But for at least a couple of the city managers' meetings, it's been mostly a 45-minute PowerPoint presentation, and then a little bit of discussion afterwards, and that's kind of it. PowerPoint presentations are fine, but we've had those at the regular city council meetings. I guess it's a matter of, do we want to take eight regular meetings and just take them off the board in order to have these meetings? But my position is I would prefer not to do that, but I would be willing to go along with a compromise where we did it either before or after on the last meeting of the month. But again, I think that if we're going to continue with the meetings, what's required is some an affirmative motion from somebody on the subcommittee.
So I'm not through. So why do we have an ad hoc clerk auditor oversight subcommittee in the first place? Why does it even exist if we're never going to use that?
Well, it exists because the city council reinstituted, but, I guess I would agree with what I think you're saying, is that since that's in place, there's not as much need for the city council to devote an entire meeting on a Tuesday to
That's right.
oversight.
But I am in favor of your compromise.
Councilman Donson.
Given the discussion, I'll make a motion that the subcommittee recommends that we continue the the special meetings before rather than instead of the regular meeting. And the mayor will schedule the start time depending on the length of the agenda that's estimated. So I wouldn't stipulate when the start time is. So I'll just make the motion that recommend that the special meeting continue to be scheduled on the last Tuesday of the month when there are meetings, but that it be prior to rather than instead of the regular meeting.
Okay, I'll second that motion. Discussion on the motion?
Well, you know, if, I don't, I think that gets to the mayor's point of whether this is due diligence or we're back to the subcommittee. You know, I think, you know, we're going to add now an additional meeting, which, you know, in the spirit of the compromise, I'll support the motion.
Well, let me say this regarding the compromise. We could try this and see how it goes for the first round and the first two rounds. Just like we tried the first way in 2012, we could try this compromise way for 6 or 8 meetings and see how that goes. And if that's not working, or if it does seem that the meetings are not worthwhile, then we could revisit the issue, you know, halfway through the year.
That's fine. I think if we get the sense, someone can always file a motion to do that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, all in favor of the motion? Aye. All opposed? So voted. Motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn? Seconded. All in favor, all opposed? Meeting's adjourned.